Shalom and welcome to the Israel Policy Pod. I'm Neri Zilber, a journalist based in Tel Aviv and a policy advisor to Israel Policy Forum. We're going to focus on domestic Israeli politics this week as we enter 2026, an election year. And to start us off, we'll be talking with Barak Herskowitz, who is an Israeli political analyst and media strategist, a former advisor to Naftali Bennett when he was Prime Minister of Israel, and the current host of the Hebrew language podcast called Unpopular Opinion. I've known Barak for many years, from his time as a young and prominent Likud party activist. He was what I referred to back then as my Likud whisperer. So I chatted with Barak about his own personal and political journey and why he ultimately broke with Bibi Netanyahu's Likud party, the chances of his former boss Naftali Bennett beating Netanyahu in the upcoming election, and why exactly did he, Barak, quit working for TikTok? This was a very cool conversation from the point of view of the Israeli anti-Netanyahu right. But first, a few thoughts from me. So, FYI, I'm recording this intro on Monday, January 12th, 2026, and the interview with Barak we did last night, Sunday night. But the big news still is the unrest and protests in Iran, now into their third week. For anyone interested in understanding how Iran got to this very low point and the very real dilemmas for the regime in Tehran, both at home and abroad, i.e. Donald Trump and his continued threats to intervene in what's happening in Iran, do check out our podcast from last week, which was terrific, with Dr. Nesan Rafati. On the other fronts, we're all still waiting for an announcement on next steps with regard to Gaza and the so-called phase 2 of the ceasefire deal. It's likely to happen in the coming days, trust me. So that's definitely something to still keep an eye on. And Lebanon as well is also churning in the background. An imminent escalation by Israel against Hezbollah seems like it's been put on hold for now. Everyone, I think, both in Israel, across the region, and definitely in Washington, are waiting to see how events in Iran unfold. Nobody really wants to take the attention and bandwidth away from the very real troubles of the Islamic Republic. And you see that too in the overall pretty careful way Israeli officials and, well, most but not all government ministers speak about the unfolding situation inside of Iran. So the two real playing fields are really on the streets of Iran and in the White House, to say nothing of in Donald Trump's mind. And with that, let's get to Barak Herskowitz. Hi, Barak. Welcome to the Israel Policy Pod.
Hi, thanks for inviting me, and hello to all of your amazing audience. I don't usually do podcasts in English. I do most of them in Hebrew, so I'm thrilled. Thanks.
So I know you do Hebrew podcasts. You have your own podcast, which I want to ask you about. And this is the reason why, part of the reason why I wanted to start hosting a podcast, to bring Israeli voices to the outside world so people really understand what's happening here. And you, Barak, are one of the people that I've known for many years and whose opinion I respect. And I wanted to talk about your history with the Likud party, with Naftali
I think at
Bennett.
least 12 years, isn't it?
I want to say probably 15.
Yeah, maybe 15.
14, 15 years. Yeah. We're going to get into our history too. But you have a past basically on the Israeli right. And so I thought it'd be very interesting to get into that side of the aisle, especially for our many listeners. And we're going to do something a bit different. We're going to start with your personal and professional history, Barak, and then we're going to work backwards. And after that, we're going to get to current events. And I'm going to pick your brain about what to expect in 2026, this election year in Israel. But first off, Barak, explain to us these days what you do. So I see you on channel 12, 13. You have a podcast called Unpopular Opinion, Da Lo Popularit, in Hebrew. Explain to us, what's your deal? What do you do?
So I come from at least 15 years of working in politics and policy. We'll dive into it later on, I think. But I worked in the Prime Minister's office, and then before that, I was an advisor and spokesperson to the mayor of Jerusalem, Nir Barkat, and
That's right.
I had my own consulting firm, and I worked with many politicians and NGOs and think tanks in Israel. So I come from this ecosystem. And even though I had a few years of working in high tech, by the way, if you have Israeli listeners who are in politics or policy or NGOs, or go work in high tech. It's an amazing, amazing journey. So many different types of cereal and candies and great. Everything is very fun.
As they say in Israel, naim, conditions, good
Yeah,
conditions.
it's name. Great conditions, great conditions. But nowadays, I basically I try to be a voice to some of the more audacious and bold and new ideas that I think are very vital and relevant for the future of Israel. You know, Israel is at a very pivotal moment, very pivotal point, with enormous threats that we can talk about the decline of legitimacy worldwide to the existence of Israel, which many of your listeners probably feel, internal discord and distrust. It's not something unique to Israel. This is something that many societies experience. But also, there are huge opportunities. Israel obviously demonstrated regional superiority in this war, and we have unique competitive advantages in high tech and in different sectors. And I think something that is very unique to Israel, and we realized it over the past 2 years during the war, is how much the Israeli society is strong and creative and vibrant and democratic. You know, throughout this very, very hard war, and before that, we had political unrest. the Israeli the Israeli society demonstrated huge strengths, and people went into the fire to save other Israelis from the hands of the terrorists,
Mm-hmm.
and people worked throughout this war and created, and we saw, it's amazing, we saw a huge exits of Israeli startups during the war. You would imagine that the war would shut down the Israeli economy and society and the high tech sector, but no, people just kept moving forward and create, and I think we have huge threats but huge opportunities, and it's a very good time to revisit the Israeli way of life and Israeli politics and Israeli politics and policy, and I try to bring with my podcast, and I perform in the news twice or three times a week.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to bring my unique voice and unique ideas, and to break the known paradigms, and to make people think different on how we live here, and be open to new ideas. And I think it will work eventually.
So
I'm optimistic.
it definitely is an optimistic beginning to the conversation, which we love nothing more than optimism here on this podcast. Usually talking about military affairs and politics and the like, but it is interesting. You're on purpose. Your podcast is called Unpopular Opinion because you do try to kind of come at it different policy issues from a different perspective, and especially given
it
your
should have
background.
it should have been called unpopulist opinion, because some of the opinions I bring are not that crazy and not that unpopular, but I try to break the mechanism, the Israeli discourse mechanism, that everything you say comes from the perspective of a political camp. So it's either you're against Netanyahu or pro Netanyahu, and this would dictate what you think about different things, about economy, about even about infrastructure and public transportation. Everything comes from the part. It depends on the political affiliation you have. And I try to bring in guests and myself, and have a different discourse that breaks these paradigms, breaks these affiliations, and think about how can we build the country from. I think we had a very low moment. So how to rebuild the country, and not to be fenced by these limitations, by these political camps. Oftentimes it works. Sometimes I brought in people who talked about, again, public transportation or the welfare state, or different things, and how to build the government, the policy, the country, with new ideas. And I think it works. And I try to be unpopulist. It's also unpopular opinions, but usually it's unpopulist. But I'm very, very proud of what I do there, and also what I do with the media, because I'll give you a tiny example. Okay, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I was on TV, and there was a discussion about the shutdown of Galei Tzahal, the military radio.
Israel Army
Okay,
radio.
there's an army-owned radio in Israel, and I am very pro closing this radio, not because it costs much. It's not a very expensive unit in the army. I just thought, and I have thought for many years, that it's not wise for the army to be involved in political affairs and to air news and current issues. I think it's unwise for the army to be tainted with politics and such issues. And everybody in the show, in the studio, were extremely. They had one voice.
They were against the closing of the station.
It's a catastrophe. It's the end of democracy if we close this station. And I try to be genuine and bring my own voice. And the current government, Netanyahu's government, wants to shut down the station, and I'm a very known voice against Netanyahu's government, and I talk and I criticize them often on TV.
You do,
but sometimes I say yes, they're right in this specific thing. They're right, and people sometimes tend to they take it very, very hard. But they would say, and they told me live on camera, but how can you say that you're against the Netanyahu government as well? And I said, I don't need to love them or hate them to think clearly about what are my opinions are. And this is the kind of discourse that I try to bring, and I hope it works most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, it looks just by your growing profile over the past year or two that it is working. There is an audience for it. One thing that happened to you over the past year or two, and that gave you a bit more prominence both here in Israel and outside of Israel, is that you resigned in protest from TikTok. So you used to work for TikTok, and then you resigned in protest at well, I'll let you tell the story, but why did you resign from TikTok, and why did you become known as the Jewish whistleblower at TikTok?
So I wanted to work at TikTok for a long time. And when I was working with Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, we will talk about this experience as well. But I told Naftali Bennett that if they gave me an offer, and I told him, no, they didn't give me an offer yet, but I know I'm going to work for them because I have this strong urge to work there. I thought that it's an amazing app, and they just entered Israel. They just opened offices here, and I realized that it's going to be the next YouTube, next Facebook, and it would be a very wise thing for me to come when they just open it. And I gave them an offer they couldn't resist. I told them Facebook and Google and everyone else, they have people who work with the government, and you don't have anyone because you just opened the office. So I'm the best person for that. And I'm also addicted to TikTok, so I can talk about TikTok very positively, easily. And within a week and a half or two, I already had an offer from them. I got through all the process. They usually have a very long process. You need to meet with 2 or 3 different people and have home assignments and stuff like that. I didn't have all that. They really wanted me. And I started working there 6 months or 7 months after the previous government was formed. And so I left the government and I went to TikTok. And things went very smoothly and they were great. I was their liaison to the government, to the Israeli government and the public sector in Israel. and there were amazing people working there. But then October 7th hit, and I gotta say that the first day of the war, were you here, by the way, in the country back then?
I was here.
Because it was holidays, so usually, often, I assume that in the holidays, sometimes you go abroad.
Luckily, this time I did not miss it. But no, I got back, I think, a week before,
Gotcha.
a week and a half before.
So it was a crazy day. It was a very scary day because none of us knew.
Yes.
The country was invaded, and none of us knew where it's gonna go and what is really happening. And we just heard about, horrible massacre, and there were missiles and sirens. And throughout this horrible day, we realized that Hamas, they broadcasted their atrocities. I don't know if you remember, on Instagram and
I was
X.
Following it.
You were following, and it happened on TikTok as well. So we had to, as employees, the employees in Israel, we had to wake up the entire international team. It was Saturday morning here, Saturday in the middle of the night in the United States or in Europe. We had to wake them up and alarm everyone in the company to make sure that Hamas content is blocked and removed. And to be honest, TikTok did it very, very quickly and thoroughly. And I was very proud to work at TikTok back then. But then a day after or 2 days after, things started to change. And I realized that there is I realized that there is a very strong bias against Israel and against Jews already on the platform. And I realized that Israeli content creators are being blocked or shadow banned or, limited, while content about globalized intifada already October 8th, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Globalized intifada and anti-Semitic content and anti-Israeli content was flourishing. There was a tsunami of anti-Israeli hatred content. And so, I felt uncomfortable, but then the first thing that raised a red flag for me was that I was sent to the hostage family forum. They already formed their forum very, very early in the war. Right. I was sent to them to tell them that all of their content is going to be blocked on TikTok because it's considered too political, all of their campaigns. While I saw very heavily funded campaigns that were pre-approved in the system by pro-Palestinian groups who showed the Palestinian misery and kids walking out of the rubbles of Gaza saying how starved and bombarded they are, even before one Israeli soldier stepped foot on a Gazan soil. I thought it was crazy. I thought what was allowed for Palestinians obviously wasn't allowed for Israelis, and it didn't make sense. Mm-hmm. So things happened, and more examples like that I was personally involved with. I was sent to Birthright. Many of your listeners probably are very much familiar with Birthright. They had a campaign to bring in volunteers from the United States and Europe to volunteer here in agriculture because all of the agriculture foreign workers fled from the country.
Right.
And that campaign was also blocked by TikTok because it was too political, because people had shirts saying Am Yisrael Chai. So I tried to explain them that Am Yisrael Chai, the people of Israel, I don't know, it's just a saying, it's just a chant, it's a Jewish thing, that it's like the British chant, keep coming and move on. Okay, so it's like,
yeah, the people of Israel are alive or lives.
Yeah,
lives.
Yeah, and I realized that there was a very, very severe bias against Israel. So I started exploring this, and I became a very vocal employee within the company about this. So someone told me, you need to look at. We had an internal system, like Slack, an internal platform for the employees of TikTok, usually meant for work. And someone told me that there is a group inside this platform that is called Palestine Support, and that I need to join it and see what's going on there. And I realized that when I joined, hundreds and hundreds, maybe more, of employees express very radical pro-Hamas, pro-Houthis. I never imagined that anyone supports the Houthis back then. Pro-Houthis, pro-Hamas, anti-Israeli, BDS opinions there, and they are proud. They said how much they're proud that they can manipulate the content on the platform. And I start to check who are these employees, and I realized that I want to be careful because I had a very great lawyer in DC that told me to be careful about these issues. But thanks, Mofo. But I want to be careful, but maybe not 100%, but 99% of the people there were in trust and safety teams, meaning they were in charge of what goes on the platform and what isn't, what is being removed. So I realized that very radical groups are in charge of, the content moderation on TikTok, and that's the core reason of what we're seeing. I put all this because obviously I try to ask the company, open tickets and ask them what can we do about it, and no response. So I wrote an internal memorandum, and I was Israeli. How do you say? It was a bit of an Israeli chutzpah.
Yeah.
And I sent it to the CEO of TikTok, and all of the C-level managers report directly to him. And I told them with screenshots and examples and everything. And I told them we have a severe problem in the company. People support Hamas, support the Houthis, and they manipulate the content. And so from that point on, I felt like I was being under investigation in the company, and weird things happened. So I had to leave. I didn't talk about it publicly because I was too afraid of the Chinese and the company. It's a huge company. It's a very strong company. Yeah. So I decided to leave because I felt like I don't want to be involved with such a company. I don't want to be, maybe the lie can win on TikTok, but it won't win with me, throughout me. And I left, and I decided to go home and leave it all behind. But then a few weeks after, I realized I got hundreds of phone calls and WhatsApp messages saying that my memo got to a Senate hearing. So there was a hearing in the Senate to the CEO of TikTok, and they mentioned what I wrote. They mentioned my story, and that changed my perception as well, because I realized that it's an opportunity for me to bring this story to the public, and because it's not only TikTok, obviously. Exactly. It's a much wider thing. And I made a mistake. My first interview about that was with the New York Times. I must say that it didn't go out the way that I wanted to. But I talked about it on different media outlets, Telegraph and Fox News, and said others. And that basically made people approach me. So like other employees of TikTok, other companies and other scholars and decision makers, senators, whatever, from all over the world started approaching me and told me how they see not only TikTok and not only the Israeli story, but the threat of social media being manipulated by hostile powers that try to erode or harm democratic societies, and how they use it. Because I always say that social media is an amazing thing. It's like an airplane. An airplane can bring you from A to Z in a very efficient way.
Yeah.
And it's a great tool. But if it's being hijacked by terrorists, obviously it's
a weapon.
a dangerous weapon. So same with social media. And I realized I started to connect different parts of the puzzle and realize that it's a much bigger issue of countries like Qatar and Russia and China that invest a lot of money and efforts in manipulate those social media platforms against the West and spread extremism and social discord and conspiracies. And it's something that I've been studying and being involved with recently in the past 2 years. I go once every few months. I go on a speaking tour in America and other places, sharing my personal story, but also the bigger story of how Qatar and Iran and Russia and China operate these weapons. And it's a great opportunity. It's a great thing.
It's one of the biggest stories of our day because it impacts literally everyone. I think we could spend an hour just on this issue, but I want to move ahead.
Hours, days.
Yeah, days. I mean, on podcasts, I guess if we were like Joe Rogan, we'd go for 5 hours, but nobody wants to hear us for 5 hours.
But I would say that if it interests some of the listeners, feel free to write me. Feel free to approach, because I go abroad very often to talk about it with think tanks and organizations and Jewish communities, and I'm always happy and open to learn about new information that I wasn't aware of, and also to share my story. So talk to me.
Yeah, reach out to Barak. He is available. But Barak, I wanted to continue with your journey moving backwards, your time working in the Prime Minister's office for Naftali Bennett. So he was Prime Minister in 2021, 2022, in the unfortunately short-lived government of change, as it was called, when Netanyahu was back in opposition. It happened. It can happen. I'm curious, what was your experience like working in government at the Prime Minister's office for Bennett as Prime Minister?
It's funny, we're doing it like the Seinfeld episode
in reverse,
the reverse Seinfeld.
Yeah,
episode.
where they go to a wedding in India, yeah, or like Benjamin Button. So it's your life moving backwards.
I was the campaign manager for Naftali Bennett when he ran for office, which is an amazing experience that we can elaborate on if you want. But then right after he was appointed to be prime minister, it was during COVID, it was during the pandemic, and the government, they knew that they needed to manage properly the way they approach the public with information about the pandemic, about restrictions, vaccinations, etc. So there was a lot of information to give to the public and handle this issue very carefully. And Bennett invited me to be the government spokesperson for COVID, basically, which was, I think back then, was the only and the most important issue of every government, and the Israeli government as well. So I was basically the Israeli government spokesperson for that issue. It was a very, very interesting experience because the government before that, Netanyahu's government, it was Netanyahu obviously is you can either like him or dislike him, but he has a very strong influence on the public discourse. People see him as a prime minister. He's been in office for many years, and the first part of the pandemic, people were afraid. People saw what's happening in New York, in Italy, in Iran. I don't know if you remember, and it was very, very scary.
Right.
So when they had restrictions, or when they told the people to get vaccinated, people just followed the instructions, and people believed the information that they were given. But then, time has passed a little bit, a few months, and then this new government comes to power, and it's a very this government had a very weak support within the Israeli public. Obviously, it was only half of the seats in the parliament.
Yeah,
the coalition.
It had
61. Very heterogenic.
Yeah, it was a wide coalition.
61 in a very good day, I must say.
Yeah, I think. Well, that's what undid the coalition.
Yeah. So I ran very thorough and deep studies on the Israeli public and how to approach the Israeli public with information. And we realized that we need to change approach completely, and we need to be much more cooperative with the public and to just give them information by experts, and then always emphasize it's your call how to act with this information. we avoided shutdowns and we avoided very harsh measures, and we tried to communicate that now, you have the responsibility to get all this information and do whatever you feel comfortable and right with. And I think it was a very, very interesting phase, very, very interesting journey for me. I want to tell you something about Naftali Bennett and the government.
Yeah.
I worked before with previous governments, and Bennett, I gotta say something good about Bennett, that he was very, very professional as a prime minister. So every morning he would open the day with a meeting with all of the relevant ministers and CEOs of the ministries, and every day we all had our tasks from yesterday. We needed to report what happened with our tasks. If something is not working right, we had to report what's blocked, why is it blocked, what do we need from other people in the government to help us succeed. It felt like a very, very professional place to work. It's very unusual for Israeli governments that usually work in total chaos. I think it's something that Naftali Bennett should be very proud of. He has a very, very different approach than Netanyahu. I thought that unfortunately it was a very weak coalition and very diverse. So they couldn't agree on almost anything. So to be honest, it couldn't last for more than 1 year. I thought it was a miracle that it lasted for a year and a half, a year and 3 months. I thought it was it exceeded my expectations, but I think it was overall it was a very good government. Not perfect, not everything was perfect, and I think that the decision to rely on a coalition that has a political party that is affiliated with the Islamic Brotherhood. I thought it was too radical for Israel back then and also now. I thought it came with a cost.
Right.
But the government itself was good, I think.
Yeah. So you're referring to the Ram party led by Mansour Abbas, Arab Israeli Islamist party, effectively. That was part of the Naftali Bennett Yair Lapid coalition back in 2021, 2022. Hold that thought, because we're going to get into what your expectations are for the coming year and after election and what may happen. Don't worry. I'll just say, in terms of that government versus, other Israeli governments, and we've only had Netanyahu as prime minister since, we've been doing this professionally, or at least since 2009. The Bennett Lapid government was a lot more professional and effective at public outreach and media strategy, especially vis-a-vis
definitely.
the foreign media and the outside world, and it's not even close. And I've said this before on the podcast.
Look, we there's something there in the prime minister's office. There is a department called Marach Hasbara Leumi, which is basically the national public diplomacy
directorate.
Whatever, directorate. This was empty for. I mean, there were people working there, but when I went there physically the first time, people were surprised to see that anyone enters the hallway. So they're like, "Why is anyone here?" People forget about this place, forgot about these people, and one of the most important things that we've done. I knew that I want to move on to work in high tech, specifically in TikTok.
Just for the candy and the free cereal and the food, right?
Of course, of course, for the free cereal. By the way, in the prime minister's office, I don't know if you know, there's no espresso machine. There's only instant coffee.
Is that right?
Only instant coffee. Yeah, it's very poor conditions, to be honest.
I mean, it's a poor building; it needs to be redone, but that's a whole other.
It needs to be, of course, turned down. And I think that one of the first thing we've done was to revitalize this place, to bring in, to attract very, very talented people, and spokespersons in different languages, and media managers, So it was very important for us not only to attract the right people, the right talents, but also to make sure that all of the rest of the ministries, they understand that in time of crisis, like wars, pandemic, etc., everything is being managed by this office. So it's not that every branch or minister or ministry talks what they want and give whatever information they want to the public. It all has to go through the prime minister's office whenever it's in time of crisis. The first few times that I had to fight with the ministers and their spokespeople was not easy. I had to tell them that it's that they need to change their, and I had to explain to them why is it important that they need to be coordinated with the government. But they did, and they understood the importance of being well coordinated, and they understood the benefit of operating according to data and information and studies. And I think it was a very refreshing experience, because usually the Israeli governments are very, as I said, they're very chaotic. People usually tend to step on each other's foot, leak conversations all the time. And for 1 year, it was a bit different.
Yeah, for 1 year, the government, on the whole, worked fairly well. I think the coalition in the Knesset was a different matter, but the government itself and the ministers, from what I can recall, worked quite well. And like I said, night and day different in terms of the outreach and the messaging from the prime minister's office, and especially, every Israeli government talks a lot, maybe too much, with the Israeli media. But under Netanyahu, I don't think this goes back even before the war. Not enough actual outreach to the foreign press. They just couldn't care less. And under Bennett and also Lapid, it was very different.
Israel Policy Forum is a policy organization rooted in the Jewish community. Our mission is to build support for a secure, Jewish, democratic Israel through a viable resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, advancing pragmatic U.S. policy towards the conflict, U.S.-Israel relations, and regional diplomacy among policymakers and community leaders. We promote policy measures endorsed by credible security experts, develop analysis and commentary, and convene programs that engage and educate leaders across the political, denominational, and generational spectrums. Our Young Professionals initiative, IPF Atid, works to elevate the discourse among next-generation leaders by building community and facilitating engaging programs related to Israeli-Palestinian affairs. To learn more about our work, visit us online at israelpolicyforum.org and follow us on social media. If you rely on Israel Policy Forum for credible and nuanced analysis, please make a tax-deductible gift today at ipf.li/supportthepod or at the Support the Show link in the show notes.
Barak, continuing on our stroll down memory lane, you and I first met, like we said, many years ago, because you were my Likud whisperer. You were my expert inside the Likud, and we used to meet for coffees down on Ben Gurion Boulevard in central Tel Aviv. And you used to very patiently sit and explain how the Likud works, the different factions, the central committee, because you were an official member, an active member of the Likud party back then.
Yeah.
And yet now you are no longer that. And like you said, you went and worked for Naftali Bennett and supported Naftali Bennett, I assume, and also are critical of this Netanyahu government. So what happened between you and the Likud party? Did the party leave you, or did you leave the party?
So you're right. I wasn't just a member of the political party. I was also very active in it, and I established two different caucuses, two different bodies within the party. One I was one of the co-founders, but I wasn't the main founder. It was the Pride in Likud group, Likud LGBT group, which was I would say a very brave and a very interesting thing to do, because back then, and I assume it's not only in Israel, the idea that the right wing and LGBT groups can go together was very weird, was very odd. But we knew that there are many LGBTQ people in Israel that are right wingers, and it would be very, very important to give them a political home and also to open up the Israeli right-wing parties to the LGBT issue and to build bridges between these two worlds and make them see each other. I thought it was very, very important and very crucial both for LGBT rights in Israel and for the right-wing parties, and especially for the people who felt in their hearts that they are right-wing in the sense of, they are economically liberal and they pro-free markets, and in security-wise, there are more right-wingers, but also there are LGBTQ, and they feel like, gay rights and human rights is something very crucial for them. I thought it would be very, very important to give them this place. And the second and the more important group that I established was it was called Manof. We tried to I recruited people into Likud, and we tried to strengthen classic liberalism within Likud, meaning free markets, separation of church and state, personal freedoms. I thought it was a great success in the beginning. I thought that the Likud back then was like an open platform, very open-minded, very open-minded people, very moderate, and you could just come in with good ideas as long as you are genuinely within the right-wing sphere, and you could shape policies, shape the discourse within the party. It was also, I gotta say, I thought that the first Netanyahu governments between 2009, more or less until 2016, 17, they were good governments. They promoted very huge reforms like opening the seaports to competition and opening the open air reform that brought in many new airlines and free markets in the airline industry. They reduced taxation in a very smart and wise way, and they've done many things that I supported and I thought was good. By the way, sometimes even when it was hard moves, because it required some very harsh clashes with with the unions and with monopolies, etc. But then around 16, 17-ish, I realized that Netanyahu takes the Likud and the governments to a whole different path. And from that point on, I thought that he decided to avoid touching any hard problem or any crucial challenge that Israel has, and just cover it all up with the PR. The best example, I think, is Hamas. We all realize that Hamas is growing stronger, and that's approximately when Netanyahu decided to bring in the Qatari money in hope that it would stabilize Hamas and buy a few years of quiet instead of doing what he promised,
dealing with the problem.
Yeah, dealing with the problem and eliminate Hamas. And so there was, but every 2 or 3 years, he went on an offensive against Hamas. It was very limited, and then when it ended after 20 days or 30 days, he celebrated publicly and said that they're deterred, and
we took them back 30 years.
We took them back 30 years, and they would never think to mess with us again. Yeah. So I realized that Netanyahu is running away from crucial problems and running away from doing the right things, the hard things, and covering it all with PR. And that's where I started to be more vocal within the party against these policies. But it changed.
By the way,
yeah.
Barak, was it just on, say, Hamas, Gaza security issues, or were there other policy differences?
Economic issues and many other issues as well. Every 1st of September, the teachers' unions, they threat to
strike,
to go on a strike.
Yeah, at the beginning of the school year.
The beginning of the school year. Now, the the education in Israel is declining rapidly and dramatically from year to year, even though the budget is growing. It more than doubled within a few years. So obviously something bad happened there. So something, obviously the resources are not allocated correctly. Something is not managed right. We all knew that he needs to promote very hard reforms on giving schools more autonomy and change the way that teachers are hired. But the unions were very much against. So every year on the 1st of September, they would write a huge check to the unions, to the to the teachers that are many years in the system, and the unions would cancel the strike. And it's just an example of how I realized that he would prefer to give protection money or to give out money just to avoid any hard decisions.
Right.
In 2000, what happened is I went with a very good friend of mine that later on became a deputy minister, Abir Kara. He was the leader of a movement that for small businesses in Israel, and I went with him when I was a Likud member. I went with him to meet with Netanyahu. I opened the door with Netanyahu for him. It was in the beginning of the pandemic, and we came with a list of ideas of things that Netanyahu could do for small businesses that didn't require legislation. So he could just do it as a prime minister and with his government.
Mm-hmm.
And back then he told us, you vote for me, because it was before elections. You vote for me, and then I will do those things that you require, that you ask for. And we asked them, but why won't you do it now? Why won't you just do, out of these 10 things, 5 of these things, and then we will vote for you? Obviously, it's okay. But then I realized it was a moment like I felt like it was the Wizard of Oz. The curtain opens, and then I see a PR specialist that doesn't want to do anything hard, but just to cover everything with PR. That's how I felt. And that's when I decided to leave Likud.
Very interesting. And by the way, in the beginning and during the pandemic, small businesses were getting crushed because everything was shut down. Yeah, I mean, it was not a small issue here or anywhere around the world.
Not a small issue. That was the straw that broke my back. And I knew Naftali Bennett a little bit, but I never had any connection with him. And then we met somewhere, and this meeting was love at first sight. So it was, all these Christmas movies with, that when you see the,
This is Love
butterflies
Actually.
in the air. Yeah, Love Actually. So we saw eye to eye on so many issues, and I agreed with so many things he said, and he agreed with so many things that I claimed. And I came after 10 or 11 years of being an activist in Likud, and I was very disappointed by Netanyahu and the Likud back then. And so it was just meant to be this meeting. And then that night he asked me if I want to be his campaign manager, and I said yes. And that's when I started working with him. I didn't know him before then, but it was on a basis of a very, very successful meeting when we had a very deep conversation and we saw eye to eye on so many issues.
Amazing. We'll get to Naftali Bennett in just a second, but I'm curious, as a former Likud member, what you think of the party these days. I think
it's very unfortunate. I think the Likud has become a very populist party. It reminds a little bit of the look. Likud still in the polls, 25 mandates, which is about 20% of the voters in Israel. They say that they would vote for Likud. These are it's the backbone of the Israeli society. These are the people who send their kids to the army. These are the people who are small business owners and people who work in the government and people who are in the IDF. And these are the best people we have in the country, okay? So the people who vote Likud, and we can talk about why they vote Likud, these are the best people in this country, okay? And I know many of them because I was so much involved with this party. But I think the party itself became, unfortunately, a Peronist party,
Peronist, like
Peron
in Argentina.
in Argentina.
Okay.
It serves only the good of one specific leader without acknowledging any of his flaws or any of his mistakes. I say that people make mistakes. I made mistakes in the past. I will do mistakes in the future. Neri, I don't know if you have done mistakes in your life
Never.
but never, of course. But people do mistakes, and it's impossible to even discuss about Netanyahu's mistakes there. There are no. When I was active in Likud, there were different camps, the political camps within the party, different political affiliations. It was a constant battle between powers and ideas and fractions, and it was very healthy for a political party. And now you don't have this anymore, and it became very populist in the sense of fighting against the elites. That's what drives many of the members of Knesset there. And also, and I think that's the most unfortunate thing, is that they are now actively promoting and actively supporting conspiracy theories, very radical conspiracy theories, just in order to shift fire from Netanyahu and the government.
Mm-hmm.
They would say, and they would promote anything from senior IDF people operating together with Hamas, planning this together with Hamas.
Traitors from within.
These are things that I think that are, it's beyond horrible. It's something that we cannot accept, and I think it's very unfortunate. And I think this is obviously, when I was in Likud, when I was more active in Likud, I would always hear these people who were ex-Likudniks would say, "This is not the party that I know anymore." Obviously, and it's it's a cliche. It became a cliche. But I really think that after many years of supporting Likud and promoting Likud and making sure that everyone around me vote Likud, I think that even though the Likud voters and many of the activists are the best people in this country, the mechanism itself became very corrupt, very populist, and the worst thing is that they promote these very hostile, very toxic discourse, and I think it's very bad for the country.
Absolutely bad for the country, because it's everyone that disagrees with the supreme leader of the party and the country, prime minister, is immediately attacked.
And I gotta say, I don't think Netanyahu is a villain. I don't think he's in his core a bad person. I think he's done great things for the country, both as obviously as a commander in the IDF, and later on as a politician, and in the UN. He has so many things to be proud of that he contributed to this country and to Zionism and to the Jewish world. But I think these late few years, it shows that the price of his leadership are they exceed the benefits.
Yeah, we may disagree on the Netanyahu issue, but I'm not in, I don't know how history will judge him. Let's put it that way. I don't know, the longest serving prime minister in Israel, that's a fact. But other than that, let's say it's an open question.
Just from the fact that he was the longest serving, it means that it can't be that all of the things he's done was bad. Okay, some things he's done that were great, just from being there for so many years. But I think that nowadays is being he needs to go away. He needs to retire and just leave this political system alone
and go make money. But it doesn't seem like he is wanting to go and retire.
No.
So I wanted to get into current events, Barak. I'm going to do it rapid fire. So
okay, wow.
First question. I mean, look, we could go another hour just on Netanyahu, Likud, and the people who we purged from the
So
party.
we have 2 hours about TikTok we need to do, 2 hours about
Yeah.
Netanyahu. Okay, what else? Okay,
Yeah, but I said, it's like going to
so
be
we
a
need to schedule all that.
Joe Rogan episode. No, question number one, looking ahead to 2026. This is the best and worst parlor game in Israel at the moment. When do you think elections will be held this year?
Sometime between June to September.
Okay.
It makes sense. I mean, obviously, everyone understands that the government is shaky already, and it will probably around May, June. That's pretty much the window for elections.
Yeah, my money's on May, maybe bleeding into June, but soon, I think. Not the fall. Okay. Second question. Back to Naftali Bennett. He's leading, well, in terms of non-Netanyahu options, he's leading in the polls. Do you think he will be able to sustain it? What do you think his steps are in terms of remaining the main challenger to Netanyahu and potentially the next prime minister once again?
First, you need to bear in mind that he was already in this position in the past. He was with 24 mandates in the polls in 2020, and then he declined rapidly to 10, and from there to 7. And then also it happened to Gantz. Gantz, just a year and a half ago, he was with 40 mandates.
Yeah, 40.
30, yeah. 40, like the biggest in the country, and then now he's below threshold. So
he's below.
Things can change very rapidly.
Below the threshold. I think I saw a poll.
Below, yeah.
2 days ago, I think.
Even though he can come back, I think he can come back.
Okay.
I think in the end there are two things that Bennett needs to bear in mind. One, he would need to be seen as his party that doesn't exist yet, right? It would have to be seen as an alternative ruling party to the Likud. So it has to be center-right, big enough, with great promises, very inspiring. He would need to make sure that other prominent leaders join him, and he needs to create this feeling of people joining him, because he is the alternative, main alternative party to Likud. It doesn't have much time to do so, so it has to be done in the next month or two.
Because why? Because he needs to.
Because otherwise, new actors can come in, or he can go below 20 mandates in the polls, and then it reopens the game, because he's not that big anymore. He needs to only lose 3 or 4 mandates and go down to 18, 17, 19, so it doesn't look like an alternative big ruling party like Likud.
Gotcha.
And then all options are on the table, and it's very, very risky for him. But if he succeeds with that, and he approaches elections as an alternative ruling party, big party, that absorbs other powers and other leaders in, the elections are going to be around the issue, the question of what is the main issue in the public discourse in the last few days, okay? What's on the agenda? What's on the public agenda in the last week or 2 weeks of the elections? If the public agenda, if the things that everyone talks about would be the question of who serves this country and who the country serves, okay? Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox, and the fact that they don't join the army, economic questions, cost of living, if that would bother the electorate, the people, and that would be what people talk about, it's a very easy win for Naftali Bennett, because he has competitive advantages, and Netanyahu is very strong with this. But if the agenda would be about security issues or geopolitical issues, Netanyahu wins 100%. Okay, because there are between 5 to 7-ish mandates in between that are not sure what camp to vote for. They are not sure whether to vote for Netanyahu and affiliated parties, or to the other side. There are 7, 6, 8 mandates in between.
Okay.
And if the questions, if the elections are elections around the question of who can lead better the government, the country in security issues, in geopolitical issues, they would go back to Netanyahu, not because they believe him or love him. Some of them, they have very negative feelings towards him, but they think and they believe, they feel like this is what I know. It's the leader I know. He's done good in the war, even though the war is on him. Okay, but he's done good ever since after the October 7th. While the other side, the opposition, always called to stop the war, to
take a hostage deal,
to give up, to take the hostage deal, to give up before the pager operation, before Iran, before what has done to Hezbollah, before basically the IDF crashed Hamas. Before all that, they always advocated to take the deal, and those people in between, if that's what on their mind, if that's the issue of the elections, they would vote for Netanyahu. So both leaders need to try and control the media, the public discourse, and the agenda during these very crucial days before the elections.
Very interesting. And issues like the Qatargate scandal, where aides close to Netanyahu took money from Qatar, or issues like, what was the big issue here before October 7th, the attempt to undermine the judicial system?
The judicial system is already calculated within the decision already. What people think about Netanyahu and against, for Netanyahu, etc. Qatar is, I think, it's the first time that it's a very threatening issue for Netanyahu, and I'll tell you why. He always said that the feeling that he tries to give to his potential voters is that the opposition, they work and service the Arabs. Okay, they made coalition with the Arabs. They feel the extreme left wing are always very pro-Arab, pro-Palestinian. Even though the October 7th, they're traitors, as we said, right? They're traitors. They work with Hamas, etc., etc. The fact that his immediate environment is tainted with working with not just Arabs, the worst country other than Iran to Israel, I think it harms him very, very much. He would try to minimize this, and I would say that for the opposition, it would be very wise to just
emphasize
continue to tackle this issue over and over again. This issue and the Haredi issue, these are two issues that they need to focus over again.
Yeah, and we've seen Bennett do that over the past 2 weeks very, very strongly on this issue.
I got to say that from my experience as a campaign manager for Bennett, he wasn't very strategic when I worked with him, because there was a strategy that was obviously we had the best American strategists and pollsters and everything, and we spent a lot of money on that, and there were very smart strategies that we all we had is to follow them. And Bennett was he worked from his guts, and he didn't follow the strategies. And whenever he didn't follow the strategies, it harmed him in the bailout. But now I think he comes in a very, very different approach. He sticks with the right strategy, with the right strategic messaging, and he's like laser focused on them. And it's a very interesting change from the old Bennett that I've known.
He's maybe learning from his past mistakes, including maybe to pick a better list of partners that are going to enter his party, which undid him last time. Barak, we're over time. So final question to you, as both a Bennett supporter and a former advisor to Bennett. If the opposition or the anti-Netanyahu or anti-government parties don't get a majority outright, 61 seats, without the Arab parties, or at least the Ram party, after Election Day, whenever it happens, would you prefer Bennett to go and sit under Netanyahu in that kind of government, or would you prefer to them, repeating the experiment of 2021, where you have a very broad coalition with the support of at least one of the Arab parties, likely Ram party? What would you prefer?
I don't think the Israel. Well, first, it depends very much on what will Ram party will look like, because if they would, in the beginning of the war, they expressed some ideas that Jews in Israel can't live with. Okay, for example, their leader refuses to condemn Hamas.
No, Mansour Abbas.
Even though, Mansour Abbas.
No, he's condemned. He's condemned October 7th.
He's condemned whatever happened to citizens on both sides. Okay, and you need to see what he left an interview outraged just recently, because they kept asking him. By the way, left wing interviewer asked him, but what do you think? But would you condemn Hamas or you don't condemn Hamas? What do you think? And he couldn't. I think they would have to reform their own party dramatically, and if they want to be in the coalition. Otherwise, generally speaking, I think that the opposition should have gone to Netanyahu long before and offered him to go into the coalition without the Charedim and without Ben Gvir, to replace them. If he doesn't accept it, he doesn't accept it. But if he will, to change the whole policy of Israel upside down. And I think it would also weaken Netanyahu dramatically, because first it would break his very strong camp that he formed with his bloc, with his parties. But also, as long as Netanyahu is the sole thing that people vote on, it's either you're pro Netanyahu or against Netanyahu, he has a competitive advantage. He has more people. If that's the question, he has more people that are for him than against him, or a very similar number. But if you take the heavy weight you put on this issue, on his specifically on his leadership, then he's just one leader of a party out of many. And I think it would weaken him on the long term. I think that the embargo that the opposition put on him strengthened him. And I think in the long run, and we see it, obviously, we see it in the last few years. And I think in the long run, to take off the embargo and offering to work with him instead of the Charedim, instead of the radical right wing, Ben Gvir, etc., I think would weaken Netanyahu, would be good for the country. I don't know if it's in the cards. I don't know if it's possible. There's too much bad blood and there's too much ego there. And I assume that if that's the case, if both sides won't have a majority without the Arabs, we will just go over and over again to elections again and again. But I think that could have been a more wise approach.
Right. If Netanyahu agrees, which he hasn't in the past, but also he may not have a choice because even according to the polls, he's nowhere.
He never got the offer. He only had Gantz entering the coalition twice. Well, but it was once in the beginning of COVID and once in the beginning of the war. Right. And it was obviously a chaotic time, and Gantz entered with no restrictions, no demands, because it was what was seen as good for the country. But he never got the offer of leave the bloc and be the leader for one last term or whatever, but without the extremists, without the Haredim. And worst case, he would say no.
Yeah, well, it may be a scenario after Election Day, depending on what happens. But I had to raise the possibility because it's being talked about.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
Barak, you didn't disappoint. Thank you so much for your time. We went over, but just by 11, 12 minutes, so we didn't go for 3 hours, even though we could have. So to be continued.
Next time we'll go for 3 hours.
Thank you very much. Good to see you. Thanks again to Barak Herskowitz for his generous time and insights. Also, a special thanks to our producer, Jacob Gilman, our editor, Tracy Levy, and our assistant producer, Eden Jesselson, as always, and to all of you who support Israel Policy Forum's work. Do consider making a donation to Israel Policy Forum so keeping a credible source of analysis and ideas on issues such as these that we all care deeply about, including this podcast. And most importantly, thank you for listening, and please subscribe and spread the word. Thanks.